Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in your life when the Holy Spirit whispers, a command so strong, it shakes the chains you didn't even know were holding you. And when he told me, pray 3 times a day, I didn't realize that instruction would expose the silent battles I was losing, heal the habit I was hiding, and reveal the shocking truth about what my daily choices were doing to my mind, my spirit, and even my physical health. What I'm about to share with you is not theory, it's transformation. Stay with me, because before these next few minutes are over, something inside you is going to break, and something far greater is going to awaken. When the Holy Spirit teaches a person to pray 3 times a day, something profound begins to shift inside them, because prayer becomes more than an act of faith. It becomes the rhythm of life that guides every thought and action forward, aligning the heart with a higher order that the mind alone could never create. This kind of consistency is not about rigid routine, but about entering a flow where the divine presence becomes familiar, intimate, and continually accessible throughout the day. When prayer is spaced morning, midday, and evening, your spirit begins to regulate your emotions the same way the sun regulates time. You begin to notice that distractions lose their power, negative thoughts grow quiet, and inner peace becomes your default state instead of a momentary escape. In these constant moments with God, your mind becomes trained to seek clarity instead of confusion, peace instead of pressure, and purpose instead of wandering impulses. Each time you return to prayer, it is like recalibrating a compass, reminding your soul where true north is, and realigning your decisions with spiritual wisdom rather than emotional reaction. This repeated returning to God builds inner discipline, the kind that strengthens your character, heals your thinking, and elevates your identity. As prayer becomes a 3 times a day conversation, the Holy Spirit begins to awaken the deeper parts of your soul that were once dormant, helping you see what you could not see when your life was cluttered with noise, frustration, or inner conflict. You notice that your mind becomes more settled, and you begin to sense patterns in your life that need correction, as if a divine light is shining on areas you once ignored. With every prayer, you peel back old layers of fear and insecurity, allowing your true strength and divine confidence to rise to the surface where it can guide your choices. The Holy Spirit uses these repeated moments to shape your inner dialogue, teaching you to speak to yourself with clarity, authority, and spiritual maturity instead of self-doubt or confusion. Your emotions begin to follow your prayers instead of leading your decisions. You find yourself overcoming impulses that once felt impossible to control. In this continual spiritual rhythm, your faith becomes more than belief. It becomes a force that moves through your entire being with steady, unwavering power. Prayer becomes the seat of your transformation, the place where your mind receives instruction and your heart receives alignment. Through this daily returning, you develop a silent strength that speaks louder than fear. The practice of praying 3 times a day also teaches you to pause, reflect, and realign in moments when life tries to overwhelm you, giving you a spiritual anchor that keeps you centered even in the face of challenges. This rhythm breaks the cycle of rushing through life on autopilot, replacing stress with intentional spiritual grounding. You begin to notice that solutions come easier because your mind is no longer clouded by constant internal noise, but guided by a peace that surpasses understanding. Each prayer session becomes a checkpoint that brings your attention back to what matters, reminding you that divine wisdom is always available. This repeated alignment keeps your spirit aware, your mind sharp, and your emotions steady, creating a foundation within you that cannot be shaken by temporary circumstances. Your confidence grows because you are no longer navigating life alone, but walking in step with the one who sees every outcome. Prayer becomes the breath of your spiritual life, the force that clears your vision and strengthens your resolve. This rhythm cultivates inner authority, the kind that makes you stand taller, think clearer, and move with purpose. Every moment of prayer deepens your sense of direction. As the Holy Spirit instructs you through daily prayer, you begin noticing a transformation in how you handle challenges, because prayer teaches you to respond rather than react. The moments that used to provoke anger or fear now trigger reflection, wisdom, and spiritual endurance. You start seeing situations through the lens of divine insight instead of human frustration, allowing you to operate with calmness that surprises even yourself. The Holy Spirit uses these 3 prayer moments to recalibrate your emotional patterns gradually, untangling the tension, stress, and pressure that once dominated your inner world. You learn to breathe differently, think differently, and speak differently, because prayer reshapes the internal atmosphere where your decisions are born. As you return to God throughout the day, you begin to see that clarity is not an occasional gift, but a consistent result of spiritual alignment. This clarity produces confidence because you trust your decisions more, knowing they flow from spiritual discernment rather than unstable emotion. Through this consistent communication, your spiritual awareness heightens, teaching you to sense divine nudges, gentle warnings, and inner encouragement. Prayer becomes your teacher, your stabilizer, and your guiding light. When prayer becomes a consistent 3 times a day discipline, the Holy Spirit begins to illuminate hidden habits that slowly drain your strength. Habits you may never mention aloud, but feel the effects of every single day. These patterns, mental, emotional, or private physical behaviors, often form quietly in seasons of stress, loneliness, or spiritual disconnection, and they begin to steal energy before you even realize it. Through prayer, you start recognizing how these habits shape your thoughts, distract your focus, and influence your decisions more than you understood. The Holy Spirit gently exposes what has been operating in the shadows, not to condemn you, but to free you from anything that weakens your purpose or dims your spiritual clarity. You begin to see that every habit has a root, and prayer helps you trace that root back to the place where it first took hold in your life. As you become more spiritually aware, you recognize the emotional triggers that feed these behaviors, and you start breaking their power through consistent surrender. This awakening creates space for self-control to rise, allowing your spirit to guide your body rather than your impulses leading your choices. Prayer becomes the tool that rewires your inner world. In these repeated moments with God, you begin to understand that discipline is not about force. It is about spiritual alignment. Because aligned people feel stronger, not restricted. When you pray throughout the day, your emotional responses soften, and your desire for unhealthy patterns weakens because you are feeding your spirit more than your temptation. The Holy Spirit uses these prayer moments to shift your desires, replacing urges with purpose, noise with clarity, and weakness with strength. You feel yourself growing more anchored, more aware, and more in command of your choice. Instead of being pulled by momentary impulses that used to dominate your thoughts, every prayer becomes a spiritual recalibration, bringing your mind back into harmony with your true identity, and reminding you that you were never created to be controlled by urges but empowered by vision. You begin recognizing that the discomfort you feel after falling into an old habit is not guilt from God, but a signal that your spirit has outgrown what your flesh still reaches for. This awareness gives you the power to rise above patterns that once felt permanent. Each time you choose prayer over impulse, you strengthen your spiritual muscles. As the Holy Spirit reveals these inner habits, He also gives you the awareness to understand the cycle that keep them alive, because nothing changes permanently until the pattern behind it is broken. Prayer 3 times a day interrupts these cycles by replacing the thought process that leads you into the habit in the first place. You begin noticing how certain emotions, boredom, stress, anxiety, loneliness open the door for old behaviors, and prayer becomes the barrier that stops the cycle before it begins. This disruption is powerful because breaking a habit is less about resisting the act and more about healing the emotional trigger underneath it. Through prayer, the Holy Spirit begins healing the root causes, restoring your peace, strengthening your courage, and replacing emotional emptiness with divine presence. When the trigger loses its force, the habit loses its power. You find yourself making choices from strength rather than desperation, and your mind becomes clearer, sharper, and more confident. You begin to walk with a sense of inner control, knowing you have the power to stop the cycle before it ever reaches your body. This is spiritual maturity growing inside you with every prayer you pray. With consistent prayer, you start recognizing that hidden habits are not only spiritual battles but also mental programs stored in the subconscious mind, running on automatic until something interrupts them. Prayer becomes that interruption, the moment when your mind resets and your spirit takes over, shifting your internal script from weakness to authority. Each time you stop and pray, you disrupt the automatic thought that used to lead you toward the habit, and you replace it with a higher consciousness and clearer intention. Over time, this repeated interruption rewires your thinking, creating new mental pathways that pull you toward discipline instead of indulgence. You begin to feel more awake inside your own life, more present in your decisions, and more aware of the difference between what your spirit wants and what your impulses crave. This awareness gives you power, because awareness is the beginning of mastery. The more you pray, the more you feel the Holy Spirit guiding you away from anything that drains your energy, your confidence, or your spiritual clarity. You find yourself choosing what strengthens you instead of what weakens you, because your mind has been renewed and your spirit reinforced. As you continue this rhythm of prayer, you begin experiencing freedom in ways you once doubted were possible, because the Holy Spirit transforms you from the inside out, not through pressure but through presence. You notice yourself becoming more patient with your own process, because transformation is rarely instant. It is built step by step through awareness, alignment, and consistent surrender. Old habits that once felt powerful begin losing their influence because you no longer feed them with secrecy or shame. Instead, you face them with light, truth, and spiritual authority. You become someone who moves with intention, someone who understands their triggers, someone who recognizes the difference between emotional need and spiritual emptiness. This spiritual maturity allows you to break free from cycles that trapped you for years, because now you have the wisdom to identify them and the strength to overcome them. Prayer becomes the shield that protects your focus, the practice that cultivates your discipline, and the force that strengthens your identity. Through this journey, you rise into a version of yourself that feels aligned, intentional, and spiritually empowered. Your body responds to every spiritual choice you make, because the human being is not divided into separate compartments, but woven together, mind, body, and spirit moving as one, each influencing the other in ways we often overlook. When you strengthen your spirit, your body begins to follow that same path of order, balance, and restoration. You start noticing that the choices you once made out of impulse slowly shift into choices grounded in wisdom, because the Holy Spirit is teaching you to listen to the signals within you. Many people ignore those signals: the tiredness, the restlessness, the irritability, the craving, the private behaviors that drain vitality and leave the body feeling weaker afterward. But as prayer becomes a daily rhythm, those signals become clearer, helping you understand that your body has been trying to speak to you all along. The Holy Spirit uses these moments of prayer to heighten your awareness so you can recognize the connection between your spiritual alignment and your physical well-being. When your spirit is strong, your body begins to respond with renewed strength. When your mind is calm, your body follows with balance. As this awareness deepens, you notice how certain habits, especially repetitive ones done in secrecy or emotional struggle, begin to take a toll on your energy, focus, and physical vitality. The body was never designed to be controlled by constant impulses. It was created to function with rhythm, rest, moderation, and purpose. When a person engages in any behavior excessively, especially out of stress or emotional escape, the body absorbs the impact, and the imbalance shows itself in ways people often don't recognize. The Holy Spirit brings this understanding gently, helping you see that honoring your body is not about rules, but about alignment with how God designed you to function. Prayer brings this design back into focus, showing you that self-control is not punishment, but protection, and discipline is not restriction, but freedom. When you pray, your internal environment changes, and your body feels that shift, responding with clearer energy, steadier thinking, and healthier desires. This spiritual alignment becomes the foundation for physical restoration, because the body flourishes when the soul is at peace. As the Holy Spirit teaches you to align your spiritual life, He also helps you understand that your physical health reflects the patterns you practice repeatedly, whether they are uplifting or draining. Many people do not realize that constant internal stress, combined with unhealthy emotional responses, impact the delicate systems of the body, including hormone balance, sleep cycles, focus, and male wellness. When someone repeatedly turns to harmful private habits as a way to release tension or escape emotion, the body becomes overstimulated, depleted, or fatigued in ways that accumulate over time. Prayer interrupts this cycle, because it provides an outlet for emotional pressure that does not harm the body but restores it. Through prayer, you begin healing stress at its root, instead of trying to escape it through temporary relief. This shift protects the body from unnecessary strain, giving it space to function naturally, replenish energy, and return to balance. The Holy Spirit gently leads you to understand that caring for your body is an act of spiritual obedience and honoring the life within you. This awareness elevates your choices, making you more intentional about what you allow your body to experience. The more you pray, the more you notice how your body reflects your spiritual state, because peace creates healing while inner conflict creates tension that echoes through your physical health. When your mind is crowded with guilt, fear, or shame from unhealthy patterns, your body carries that weight through fatigue, lowered energy, and reduced motivation. But when the Holy Spirit begins to cleanse your inner life through consistent prayer, your body responds with increased clarity, renewed strength, and deeper calm. This is the power of alignment. What strengthens the spirit strengthens the body. As you release emotional burdens through prayer, instead of through unhealthy habits, your nervous system relaxes, your mood stabilizes, and your physical functions regain equilibrium. This transformation is subtle at first, but over time it becomes undeniable, because the body always reflects the quality of the spirit that leads it. Prayer becomes the medicine that heals not through force, but through peace, not through pressure, but through presence. This harmony allows the body to recover from the strain caused by repeat negative habits, giving it space to restore its natural balance. Through consistent prayer, you gain the strength to honor your body with choices that support long-term health instead of temporary comfort, recognizing that harmful habits, even private ones, can disrupt your physical well-being more than you realize. This revelation is not meant to create fear, but to awaken responsibility, reminding you that your body is sacred, and what you repeatedly do shapes its future. When the Holy Spirit convicts you to step away from behaviors that weaken your physical vitality, He also empowers you with the discipline to follow through. You begin choosing rest instead of indulgence, peace instead of pressure, strength instead of escape. As prayer reshapes your emotional responses, you find yourself less willing to engage in anything that drains your health or burdens your spirit. This inner transformation gradually restores balance to your body, especially in areas that have been affected by stress, repetition, or emotional dependence. You rise into a healthier rhythm where your choices reflect honor, strength, and alignment with God's design for your life. Prayer becomes the force that supports your physical wellness as much as your spiritual growth. Transformation begins the moment you choose purpose over impulse, because every impulse pulls you toward what is temporary, but purpose pulls you toward what is eternal and truly fulfilling. When prayer becomes the rhythm that shapes your day, your mind starts recognizing the difference between urges that weaken you and intentions that strengthen you. The Holy Spirit begins sharpening your awareness so you can see how often impulse tries to steal your energy, your focus, and your spiritual clarity. You begin to understand that impulses come from moments of emotional imbalance, but purpose is born from spiritual alignment and divine awareness. As this distinction grows clearer, you find yourself rising above all habits that once controlled your reactions, because now you are guided by a deeper sense of identity. Prayer quiets the noise that fuels impulsive behavior, giving your mind the space it needs to think with clarity and choose with wisdom. Every time you pray, you slow down the cycle that once pulled you into choices that left you feeling empty. You begin moving from reaction to intention, from weakness to inner authority. In this new spiritual rhythm, you discover that impulses lose their strength when you stop feeding them with secrecy or avoidance and begin confronting them with truth and awareness. The Holy Spirit reveals that most impulses are nothing more than emotional attempts to fill a void that only spiritual connection can satisfy. As you pray 3 times a day, you realize that many of the habits you once struggled with were symptoms of emotional hunger, not signs of personal failure. Prayer satisfies that hunger at its deepest level, bringing comfort, reassurance, and presence that impulse could never provide. With every prayer, you exchange temporary relief for lasting alignment, and slowly your inner world begins to change. Your thoughts become more centered, your desires become more stable, and the inner chaos that fed your impulses begins to dissolve. You find yourself more patient, more self-aware, and more anchored in who you are and what you truly need. This spiritual grounding gives you the courage to step into choices that build you instead of break you. As purpose becomes your guide, you start recognizing that discipline is not a battle with your flesh, but a partnership with your spirit, because your spirit always wants what is good for you. The Holy Spirit strengthens this part of you, giving you the ability to rise above patterns that once felt too strong to resist. You notice that your confidence grows every time you choose what aligns with your higher calling, rather than what satisfies a momentary urge. Prayer trains your inner world to operate from a place of conviction instead of craving, clarity instead of confusion, and strength instead of emotional reaction. You begin understanding that every choice you make plants a seed in your future, and the more seeds of purpose you plant, the stronger your destiny becomes. This is how transformation takes place, not through willpower alone, but through spiritual alignment that reshapes how you think, feel, and respond. Purpose becomes the anchor that stabilizes you in moments when impulse tries to pull you off course. You begin choosing what your future self will thank you for. As the Holy Spirit guides you, you start seeing that purpose is not just about achieving goals. It is about becoming the kind of person who lives with intention, integrity, and spiritual authority. When you pray consistently, your identity becomes clearer, and identity always determines behavior. You begin to see yourself as someone capable of strength, someone worthy of spiritual clarity, someone designed to walk in discipline and not be controlled by hidden struggles. This shift in identity is powerful because people act according to who they believe they are, and prayer reshapes that belief. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying to break a habit. Instead, see yourself as someone who has outgrown what once held you. This inner transformation gives you new confidence that radiates into your decisions, your relationships, your routines, and your sense of self-worth. Purpose takes root in your identity, and identity shapes the path you walk. As this transformation deepens, you realize that choosing purpose over impulse is not a single decision, but a daily commitment, strengthened every time you return to God in prayer. Each moment of prayer reinforces the new patterns forming within you, teaching your mind to think differently, your emotions to respond differently, and your body to follow a healthier rhythm. The Holy Spirit empowers you to rise above temptation not through fear, but through spiritual maturity and inner strength. You become someone who evaluates choices based on long-term impact rather than short-term escape. You find joy in discipline, peace in alignment, and fulfillment in self-control, because these qualities bring you closer to the person you were created to be. Old habits fade not because you force them away, but because they cannot survive in the presence of purpose and spiritual light. Prayer becomes the environment where your new identity grows strong, where your spirit takes the lead, and where your transformation becomes undeniable. Every day you step further away from impulse and deeper into the life God intended for you.